After that, I started my own indie studio, which consisted of me and 3 other friends in my dad's dining room. And that's definitely the best way to go. I mean, living off of ramen and next to a blender in a kitchen where you can make your own drinks, that's awesome. And ignore this weird bottle that might have not water in it. And after that, we shipped a game, it released on Steam, and then I found myself at Obsidian Stores, and I've been there for the last 3 years. So I'll start at the beginning for how I actually got into the industry and where it all started. So, let's see. It was my junior year at UCI, and Blizzard was on campus at a job fair, and one of my friends got into a QA position. And he said, "Hey, would you like to work at Blizzard?" I'm like, "Yes, I'd like a job, please." So it was for a part-time QA position because I still had a full workload. And from there, I was doing QA for about, I'd say, a month or 2 on the Diablo 2 expansion. And then after a while, since I had a programming background, I got some ideas to like revamp their systems and like get some automated testing in place. Basically make some people's jobs obsolete, so people are not really a fan of me. A few of my friends that also worked in Blizzard QA wanted to work on some tools as well, so we started working on some tools in our spare time, put them in use at Blizzard, and they really helped the process a bit. It was around that time that, I mean, since we were all part-time, Warcraft 3 was wrapping up, and since there wasn't another product to move off onto, most of the QA staff was let go, as is typical procedure in a lot of companies. When there's no project for a lot of part-time or temporary employees to go off onto. Which was great for me because I was going to my senior year at UCI, and that was going to be an even crazier workload. But formed a lot of good friendships there, and I still wanted to work with the team that I had. And so we started just working on some game ideas in our spare time. We'd meet up at a friend's place, have pizza, and like go over designs, completely not understanding what game development is really like. And some of the crazy ideas we had could not have been done with a team of 4 guys. So let that be a lesson. Always try to be realistic and never underestimate how much you can overestimate. Around my senior year, took ICS 187 with Dr. Frost, and managed it so that all my friends that I was working with could take the class with me. And I think we had maybe 2 months to make a game, and so we tried to scope it reasonably. I did some programming on it, but most of my work was some design stuff. And didn't really have, like, I guess any production methodologies. It was more just, hey everybody, let's meet at my place over the weekend and just have a code-a-thon. And that was actually a very efficient process because it gave us a lot of time to just iterate and just figure out what was fun, what worked. And since we didn't have a whole lot of time to do anything, what did we make? After 2 months, we made a game that was multiplayer, 16-player LAN. We basically wanted to make the ultimate LAN party game because I threw LAN parties back in the day. I think people still do that. I'm not sure. It's been a while. And so by the end of the course, there was some kind of, I guess, a judging contest at the end of 187. And we had to take up 8 workstations, whereas all the other students could only get 1. And everybody was like at the workstation just playing, and they loved it, and it was great. And we're like, wow, we might actually have a decent idea here. And so based on how much everybody was playing the game, we thought maybe we should keep working on this. And so it was around that time that everybody graduated. I got a job at I guess a web development company doing web apps for a few months until I realized, wow, I really want to get back into just game development because while web development pays well, it's not as fun as just working on a game. And so after that time, we were still working on, the student project was called Hyperball, because I'm horrible at naming things and I like doing play on words. Because ball was not spelled B-A-L-L, it was spelled B-O-L, like hyperbole or hyperbolic. Oh, don't laugh, it was retarded. And I really should have changed the name. But anyways, enough about bad choices. Around that time, I really wanted to get back into the game industry, and I had some friends that worked at Blizzard, because Blizzard called back a lot of the guys that were on the Warcraft 3 QA team to offer them jobs again, as is customary, because now they had a project for people to work on. And they offered me a position during my senior year at UCI, but I was too busy, so I turned it down. But then, oh god, what year was it? It was like towards the tail end of 2003. I called up one of my friends and I said, I really just want to get back into the game industry, I'll do QA, I don't really care what it is, I just want to be involved somehow. And so think January 2004, I started back up at Blizzard as QA, and within 1 week, it was during WoW development, and I think I can talk about this stuff. We'll see. If I make them mad, oh well. Actually, it could be bad. So I'll censor myself a little. So within the first week, I saw some of the tools that they had in place, and there was a lot of room for improvement, and I loved tools programming. It was just instant gratification where you just write a tool, see it in effect, and it's just a really good iteration process. And so I thought of a few tools that I could work on in my spare time while doing QA work during the day, and started doing some stuff, and I think I kind of automated one guy's job, and he wasn't happy about that. But I taught him to use the tool, which meant he was getting more work done, which is then how I was kind of spinning everything, so people didn't hate me as much. And so within a week, the QA lead at the time saw what I was doing, and he's like, holy crap, there's no way you're doing QA, we want you to keep writing tools. I said, well, in order for me to do that, you need to pay me more and give me an official title. He's like, done. Within 1 week, they promoted me to be a tools programmer, where I was basically writing tools to help with their QA process, for their GM staff. I wrote some tools for designers. Little fun tidbit, since WoW is a fairly well-known game. In Nomuragon, the little binary thing that you see in the punch cards, the designer needed a tool that could actually translate ASCII characters into binary, so I wrote that tool for him and gave him the little thing to translate it. So, yay, that was all me, kind of. And so after about a year and a half at Blizzard, me and my friends, we were still working on Hyperball in our spare time, but I mean, since I was working full-time, we didn't have a whole lot of time to put into it. But we wanted to, I don't know, build it up to something that could eventually sell. And so we entered it into the IGF competition, the IGF Student Showcase, immediately following when we graduated from UCI. And we qualified to show it off at GDC. That was pretty cool. It was just like a bunch of other student projects. There was like a space station simulator, but it didn't really get a whole lot of notoriety. And we were still using a lot of trademark sounds. For example, in the game, we were using a lot of Star Trek sounds, sounds from Red Alert, things that you cannot use in a game that you want to sell. So our next goal for the following year in the IGF competition was to replace all of our assets with stuff that would not get us sued. And also building up the game, getting a persistent multiplayer aspect to it, like a mini free-to-play MMO there. We were doing all this stuff, and we had most of it up working, and so by the time we entered into the IGF next year, we actually placed as a finalist. And when we were there, I was interviewed by the OC Register, and Blizzard saw that article, and they pulled me aside one day and they said, hey, you're getting some notoriety for this. Blizzard doesn't like that. You need to choose. You can either work at Blizzard or work with your friends. I'm like, well, my friends are really depending on me. I mean, they don't have jobs in the industry, and I think it was the right decision, but I decided to leave Blizzard and to open a studio with my friends. And by studio, I mean basically working out of my dad's dining room with very, very low rent. Thanks, Dad. Just basically me and my friends getting together almost every day. They'd bring their laptops over, and we would just keep working on the game. And I think it was about 6 months later, we actually released the game, but not with a few hurdles. So we had some friends that were in the industry that hooked us up with Valve to get on Steam. And Atari was technically our publisher, though it was sold as an online game through Atari, so it wasn't actually boxed. And it wasn't really marketed as well as it could have been, and by that I mean not at all. Which, by the way, if you're ever going to talk to a publisher, make sure you get marketing in the contract. I'm not trying to imply that there was not marketing in my contract, but I'm just saying it would be a really, really good idea. Don't take things at email value. And so after the game shipped, it's a very strange game. So the name of the game is Thread Space Hyperball. Once again, I'm not the best at making names. We replaced all the assets, and it looked very different from the student project. Had like a free-to-play MMO layer on it, and we were pushing a lot of Steam stuff to its limits. This was before Steamworks was there, so we had achievements that were going off of some jerry-rigged backend on Steam, and you can create characters and get credits and level them up and play this game that was basically, I'd call it, a cross between Worms and air hockey. It was very strange. So if you're thinking about doing any kind of weird game, just make sure that your audience might be very limited, and be prepared for not selling a lot. But it was a great learning experience, and since we were already talking to Atari, since we were making a lot from the game itself, Atari lined up another contract for us to take on. They basically called me up on a Friday. I think this was like around 2005. They called me up on a Friday and said, "Oh, hey, we hear you're looking for a project to do. Have you heard of a title called Star Control?" Like, yes, who hasn't? Probably half of the people in this room now. But Star Control is an old school game. They came up with a few of them. It was really fun, like real-time space combat kind of stuff. It was like asteroids on crack with an RPG element. That's probably an understatement. And so they called me up Friday and said, "Yeah, we'd like for you guys to work on a Star Control game, but you cannot use anything that was in the original Star Control. Basically cannot use any of the intellectual property. You can only use it in name. And we need something by Monday." And like, Monday of next month? Like, no, Monday is in this coming Monday. Like, you are where it's Friday. I'm like, yes, but we will pay you quite a bit for it. And I'm like, I do like money because I have a lot of debt. And so I sat down and I spoke with my team about it, and they said, well, I mean, this wouldn't really do the game justice, and it's, you know, it kind of feels like bad mojo, but I mean, if they're going to find another team to do it, and so our team would at least be able to, I guess, do it some dignity. So Friday night, we were getting ready to pull an all weekend project. So we got a bunch of energy drinks, a lot of pizza, because that preserves very well over the course of a weekend. Yeah, you guys know. Yeah, like that grease is like some great preservative. It's wonderful. Don't even have to heat it up again. So yeah, really, really bad food. No alcohol this time. Sometimes I would like mix drinks for my team just to loosen them up. And I'd always cook lunch for them because, I mean, got to keep them well fed, and also since I wasn't paying them, I would pay them in, I guess, peanuts, theoretically. And so Friday night, we sat down and figured out, okay, well, we need to make this game. What's the most feasible way to do this? Well, if we need to do it really quickly, let's do something in Flash. Okay, who here has Flash experience? Crickets. Okay, so that's a risk. Nobody here knows the language. And then one of my developers, Matt, and he graduated from here. His name is Matt Yeager. He said, "Oh well, I made a student project in Flash, and I know a little bit about it." I'm like, "Oh, okay, it's getting a little better." I'm like, "Well, Flash should be pretty easy to learn. I mean, we're all brilliant people." And so I had two programmers and an artist and myself, which is kind of like a hybrid programmer, designer, producer, pasta chef dude. So Nick Lawson and Matt, they sat down, learned all they could about Flash, picked through Matt's old Flash engine, while me and Stuart Lawson, which was Nick's brother, we would sit down and work on the design, the art style for it, what we could do to make it a fun game, but something we can feasibly finish. So Friday night, the programmers spent that basically reading up all the docs on Flash, getting the software that they needed for it, legitimately, paid software. Piracy is bad. Me and Stu would sit down and go through all the design and stuff. And so by Saturday, they had like a mock of the engine up and running, and I was putting in some design stuff, just fleshing out all the systems, and Stuart was working on all the art for it. So by Saturday night we had something playable, but it wasn't very good. It needed a lot of tuning, there were some bugs, and by Sunday morning, and by the way this is no sleep, well, I let them sleep for a few hours, but then I woke them up, because that crap had to get done. And that's what producers are for, to bring on the pain. And the energy drinks. And that supplements sleep anyway. And there was coffee, energy drinks, and pizza. That probably took a few years off of their life. So by Sunday morning we had a build that I would say was in a beta state. And we were playing through it, it was really fun. We basically made a hot seat Flash game where, you know, you sit down with your friend, they take one side of the keyboard, you take the other side of the keyboard, and it's like Street Fighter meets asteroids. So you pick a ship, your ship has cool abilities and cool moves, you only have like a few keys on the keyboard, your friend has the other keys on the keyboard, and you like duel them, and it's like best out of 3. And it was really cool. So we delivered that to Atari Sunday night. They saw it Monday morning, they loved it, they paid us, it was great, we were all happy. And then they were so impressed with it, they said, "Hey, so do you guys have another project lined up yet or anything?" Like, no, please give us one. And that's not normally how it works with publishers. We had a fun relationship with them. And they said, well, there's an expansion to a game that you might have heard of called Neverwinter Nights 2. And I'm like, yes, I've heard of that. And I said, well, you know, and this was after Obsidian had released the first Neverwinter Nights 2 expansion, Mask of the Betrayer, and or it was shortly before the release. And so we were talking to Atari about it, and we said, well, you know that we're just 4 guys in a dining room, I mean, we can't properly do an expansion. I'm like, yeah, we really like your technology. I'm like, okay, we like it too. And they said, well, we'll pair you up with another team in Canada that can do all the content and design stuff, and you guys can work on the tech. I'm like, yeah, sure, that sounds fine. They said, and we'll pay you a lot of dollars. I don't want to use dollar figures, but it was enough to basically make me scream at my team for a while, because it was like, oh my god, this could like pay my tuition 100 times over. So that gives you a ballpark figure. But I didn't actually say the number, because who knows what my tuition could have been. And so that was a great opportunity. We got really far along in the contract process, like after negotiating with them for about a week and a half to 2 weeks. And it was basically a deal to do the second Neverwinter Nights expansion, pairing us up with another studio to do the content, we would do the tech. And then, like a few days before we're ready to sign it, it falls through. And I get a call from Atari, and they basically say, we're really sorry, but Obsidian has chosen to do the next expansion. It's within their right to do that because they have first option to do it, and we really apologize. Best of luck to you in your future endeavors. Thanks! That was an eye-opener, because then we had to find another contract or something to do to pay the bills, because at that point, I mean, even though we were all living at home and rent was cheap, we still had bills to pay, like car payments and student loans, and so we needed some source of income. And we were paying ourselves through a credit line that we had gotten from a bank, and that credit line was quickly running out, because we'd been operating like this for the last year and a half. So debt was quickly accruing, and we had to do something. So we all called up all the contacts that we knew in the industry, and spoke to a few publishers. And we actually took on some contract work porting some games from one platform to another, which is a totally viable way to make ends meet, until the publisher can't pay you for several months worth of work. Then, if you're living month to month, that's when things kind of fall apart. So around that time, well, shortly before that time, Fergus Urquhart, the CEO of Obsidian, took me out to lunch to apologize and get to know me for like the whole Neverwinter thing, and we became, you know, kind of friends. And he'd like buy me lunch, and that'd be great because I'm poor. Don't ever turn down a free lunch from a CEO, because it could open up doors. And so he would give me advice about how to deal with other publishers and set up contracts, and it was really great, learning a lot from him. And then when one of our publishers couldn't pay us for work, you know, he and I would have lunch once a month, and I'd tell him about it. I said, "Wow, that really sucks. Do you want a job?" I'm like, it was more complicated than that, but the short and sweet of it was he wanted to know if like there was anything that he could do to help, and they had some positions open. And so I spoke with my team about it, and a few of us interviewed there, and I basically got a job at Obsidian as an associate producer, which is weird because I was a programmer and a designer, but I guess since I was also running the business side of it and talking to publishers, that also made me a producer. Because back then I didn't really know what a producer did, as I'm sure most of you don't know what a producer does. Little secret, most people don't know. Because it's kind of a self-defining role, and there's a lot of bad producers out there. I've met some of them, a lot of them. And so got a job at Obsidian as a producer, and I started work on I'm not sure if it was announced or not, but I guess I'll use some vague terms. There might have been a game involving a franchise with some characters from an H.R. Giger concept that was also an RPG. Might be Aliens. And so I was working on that, basically wrangling all the programmers. Unfortunately, after a month, that project was canceled. I think I could say that.
Stolen.
Yeah, okay, it's totally public knowledge. I can't keep track of it because I never have time to read news anymore. That's the other thing, when you really get into the industry, you lose track of everything. And so after a month, and it wasn't canceled because of me. I was only on the project for a few weeks, at least I hope not. And so after that, they moved me off onto Fallout New Vegas as a position that I guess I had defined, which is called a tech producer. Because I had a strong programming background, I was a tools programmer at Blizzard, they were very comfortable letting me manage all the programmers. And since the project we were also really low on programming resources, about half of my time was spent as a producer and the other half of my time was spent programming. Basically writing tools and managing the build process. At some point, since we were kind of running low on production resources, I was also managing the character art pipeline, and that basically means managing concept artists to character artists to animators to basically ensure that creatures, NPCs, armors get created all the way through to completion. So that was a fun project, and that lasted for about I think maybe a year and a half or 2 years. I think it was a year and a half. So as a tech producer, granted, Fallout New Vegas was, I would say, a worthy successor to Fallout 3 in all aspects, including technology, but totally not bugs. No. It was bug-free. But after the latest patch is really good. And I'm really proud of my team that pulled off that final patch because that has a lot of the issues addressed and it works well with all the DLCs, and that was great. So after Fallout shipped, the owners of the company decided to make me the lead producer on the DLCs. This in itself was a little problematic because when the DLC started, Fallout had not shipped yet, and so I was still doing 2 jobs, so I couldn't fully move on to the DLCs. But over time, like I ramped up, and I had a good team working on that as well. And so after all the DLCs were done, I think we finished them last month. They moved me to be a lead producer on a much larger team working on an unannounced title. And that team is awesome. I'm working very closely with Josh Sawyer since he and I had a great relationship on Fallout. And he is a really fun character. I like that guy. And I also have a lot of my old team from Fallout. So there's a really strong working relationship there. And so yeah, that's basically where I am now. So I think as Chris mentioned, I should probably talk about like what I do on a day-to-day basis and what a producer actually does, so that the non-producers don't get too upset when they don't understand what a producer does. So Chris asked me today, well, so what does a producer do? And I answered, whatever it takes. And that was in itself, that's kind of a meta definition of producer, because it was an answer, but it was a non-answer. And that's what a producer is. A series of non-answers. But no, when I was asked this question before, basically, a producer is the glue. They fill in the gaps for whatever is needed for the project based upon their own skill set. So on Fallout, since I had a programming background and I understood programming, I was utilized in a way to create some tools as needed and to manage the programmers. We had another producer that came from a QA background, and he was used for a lot of localization stuff. But basically, the one common thread with production is that a producer is expected to manage a subset of their team as necessary. So we have some producers that manage strike teams, which are basically teams of people of varying disciplines to carry a feature through to completion, whether it be some kind of an area in the game or like a combat system, anything that requires a lot of organization. The producer is there to get everybody together, to handle all of the nuts and bolts of things, but never ever to make any creative decisions. A producer should be a producer only because they like managing and scheduling things at a high level, but never ever to, I guess, insist upon their own creative vision. If they wanted to be a creative person, they should have been a creative person to begin with. As for me, sometimes I get involved in the creative process, but not in a producer role, and that's another side thing, because I was a project director for a short time, but I can't really talk about that. But suffice to say, producers are servants to the team. They are there to facilitate, to organize, to make sure things get done. And it is one of the most thankless jobs in the industry, because far too often there are producers that are not good at this ability, and they make the good producers look bad. But you'll know when you have a good producer on your team or a bad producer, because you basically will not want to kill them. The other nice thing that I did on Fallout for my team, since a lot of guys had to work pretty late and they really pushed themselves to the limit, I would incentivize them by awarding them cookie points for doing exceptionally well on something. And granted, it's an artificial non-reward that shouldn't mean a lot to them, but it was just the gesture itself was enough for them to, like, I guess, laugh at and lighten their spirits. And so by the end of the project, they didn't think I was actually gonna own up to it, but I was keeping track of how many cookie points all those programmers got. And so I would first I found out what their favorite cookies were, all without them knowing I found out what they were. So I'd like talk to their girlfriends, talk to their friends, what's their favorite cookie? And at the end of the project, I gave all the programmers a stack of cookies that was their favorites, proportionate to how many cookie points they had. However, since I never revealed the cookie point system, I had to kind of normalize it, so I weighted all the cookies differently, so it just so happened that it seemed like everybody got the same amount of cookies. But I told them that behind the scenes, they're actually different points. But I just weighted it. One person loves white chocolate macadamia, another person loves Oreos. And you cannot equate one Oreo to one white chocolate macadamia cookie. I mean, it's just ludicrous. And so I got the cookies, they were happy, and it's funny because as those programmers move off onto other teams, the relationship that we established was so close to the point where they still talk to me on a daily basis, come into my office to talk about some of the problems that they're having in their current project. And I would say a good producer is one that is very nurturing and paternal, or maternal if you're a female, or soon to be, or was, or rather would be, whatever the politically correct term is. Basically, look out for your team like they're your family. They're not the enemy, you're not a slave driver, you're not a tyrant captain on a ship. You are their friend, first and foremost. You need to see yourself like that. The best producers I've worked with have been the ones that are very, very polite, very understanding, very friendly. Granted, there are some producers in the industry that have a very bulldog, hard-edge mentality that just drive people to the brim and they get results, but the problem is that they've just worked their team to the bone and now they're no good for the next project. So while you've just completed one project, you don't have a team for the next one. And so you just put your cart before the horse and now you're screwed. So what I would suggest to, well, actually as a show of hands, how many of you guys are actually wannabe producers? Hello! Alright, my people. So the first advice I would give you is don't. Find something else you're good at. Because if you really, really want to be a producer, you need to have a thick skin, be prepared for people to hate you on the surface, and learn to have to work an uphill battle with them. Because since there is such a negative stigma on production, you need to earn their respect and prove why they should respect you and prove why you are competent. And it's a hurdle, but it's also very rewarding because once you prove that to them, they appreciate you and they understand what it is you're doing. It's an amazingly rewarding feeling. For example, I could still be a tools programmer. I mean, I didn't stop doing it because I was bad at it. I was okay at it, I guess. I could have been a designer, but I really liked the social interaction and facilitating the success of a project. And I think that if you want to be a good producer, you need to approach it from that angle. Basically focus on what can I do to help everybody else achieve their goals. And as long as you work from that and just be everybody's friend, but not in a creepy way, like don't follow them home and do their laundry, that's weird. I would say as long as you always put everybody else first and you're selfless, you can do no wrong. Even if you're not as, let's say, competent in one field or another, like you don't understand programming, that's perfectly fine. I have producers on my team that are managing art or managing audio. Since I'm a lead producer, my role is I basically manage the other producers. And it's kind of like a fun RTS, where basically I have these resources, these units, and I need to attack the enemy, where the enemy is failure. And the best way to attack failure is with success. That sounds stupid. And so when you have various people on the team that have certain strengths and weaknesses, it's a min-maxing game. It's all about putting people to use to what they're the most effective at, and understanding your team as well as you can. And so I have a producer on my team that is exceptional at understanding art. He has an art background and he's a producer, so logically he's managing the art team. I'm managing the producers and some programmers because we might be low on production resources, but that's fine because I love doing more than I should. Oh, and the other thing is the late hours. Now, I want to put like a lot of the rumors to rest about long hours in the industry. They are entirely true, but it's entirely voluntary. For example, on my team, especially on Fallout, I would never permit any of my programmers to work late. I would send them home, I'd kick them out, and instead I would find out what they're doing and see what I could do to make their lives easier and work late myself. So, as a producer, I'd say a good producer is one that definitely, I don't want to say is masochistic, but definitely doesn't have a problem with being the sacrificial lamb at times. Putting yourself, I guess, your team's needs in front of yourself. And so if some of the programmers had to finish something that was like they had to write a report, I'd offer to do the report for them just so that they can go home and see their family. And it helps out in the end because if you have people that are overworking themselves, they're not going to be as effective the next day. If they're pulling 110-hour weeks, you're not going to be getting as useful work out of them. Unless of course, you're then using yourself as the burden, and then, I don't know, you also need to manage your own time. It's a juggling act. But never ever, at least at Obsidian or Blizzard, were the hours mandatory. It was all voluntary, and the thing about the game industry is that most people work late because they want to. They want to see the project successful. However, most of the time when people work late, it's typically due to some kind of a management deficiency or some deficiency in planning. For example, on the DLCs, there was never any overtime. There was for working on the patches, but that's another story. But for DLC development, like nobody worked late. Everybody was in there from 9 to 5. Actually, the hours were like 10 to 6 because we like to oversleep. But nobody in your team should have to work late if you're managing everything properly. And since a lot of you guys are students, I mean, that probably doesn't mean anything. You guys should like push yourself as hard as you can go and just get that game done and make it as awesome as possible because you're still young and, I don't know, you can shave off those years of your life. You didn't need those top end 10 years anyway. Those would have been horrible in diapers. So I hear. And so, yeah, that's basically it for production. I wonder what else is there. Oh, so on a day-to-day basis, what I do is, so every morning I meet with my production team, and right now I have 4 producers on my team. Well, 3 producers and 1 intern, and see what they're doing, and I've assigned them all to their own discipline that they're skilled at. So I have a producer dedicated to art, a producer dedicated to design, and a producer dedicated to animation, and I tend to wrangle a lot of the programming stuff. And see what they're doing, how their team is doing. It's up to them to task out their team and schedule them out. We have certain milestone goals that we have to hit and deliverables for the publisher. And those deliverables need to be very, very well understood because that's basically what the publisher will approve or deny a milestone based off of. So one of the most important things for working for a publisher is to make sure that their expectations are completely aligned with what you're going to be delivering. Because when they get something that they didn't expect, that's when you get a call at 5 a.m. in the morning where they're asking, hey, we need this thing that we're expecting or else we're going to be mad. And the last thing you want is a publisher mad at you. Fortunately, I've never had one mad at me, so I don't know what it's like. Completely silly. Wait, no, I think Atari was mad one time, but I can't talk about that. See, so that's pretty much most of my story. Like I said, fairly boring. I got some sympathy laughs, and I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. So I guess I'll open it up to you guys if you guys have any particular questions about, I don't know, pasta advice, what kind of sci-fi shows I like, or maybe stuff about the game industry. Feel free to ask. I am all yours now. I see a hand. You need to shout. Oh no, I hear you. Can you hear me? Yes. Oh no, we're not making eye contact.
Would you say that first one in, last one out is like pretty much a basic rule for producers when you're dealing with like crunch time and stuff, so that even if you're not actually doing the programming and the art and stuff, that you're showing that you're there for them?
I would say that applies most of the time, unless you've been pushing yourself too hard. So most of the time I get in before most of my team. And during crunch time, I'm typically there with them, not so that they know I'm there, but to make sure that I can cater to their needs. Like if any of them need food, or if I don't know, one time one of my programmers asked me to call his wife to let her know that he wouldn't be coming home because he didn't want to talk to her about it. That was an awkward conversation. But surprisingly, she wasn't surprised by it because I guess he had another producer do this for him in another project. So she's like, "Oh, he's not coming home tonight, is he?" I'm like, "No, how'd you know?" "Because he's not calling me." Like, okay, that makes my job easier. Good to know. But yeah, typically a producer, even though they might not have a lot to do, just their very presence is comforting to the team. And I would say more than half of what a producer should be doing is focusing on the social aspects of game development, what it will take to keep their team positive, to keep them productive, and doing whatever is necessary to achieve that. Next question. Yes?
In our current stage as being like students, what would you say would be some good advice for starting to like network and get connections in the industry?
Attending these things, and I think you guys might need a bigger room one of these days. You know, there's seats up here if you guys want to sit down.
I tried.
Oh, okay. That's okay, Chris. Bad producer. I totally forgot the question. No, I got it. So, I would say, as far as networking goes, the IGDA is a good place to network. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it, but there's like some social things that go on weekly, like Beer Wednesday. It pains me to say it, but this industry really is more about who you know than what you know. I mean, you can't be completely incompetent because people can see through that. Most people. I've met some people that can't. But if given two people that are, like, let's say I'm evaluating a producer. If two people are completely equal, but this person I kind of more familiar with, I actually know their name, I'm more inclined to give them a break than the person I don't know. And it sucks to say it, but I mean, at the end of the day, if like two resumes look exactly the same, but I recognize one person's name, I'm more inclined to bring that person in for an interview than somebody else. Simply because I don't have time to interview everybody, and the person that I know, that I've already like vouched for personally, I understand their personality, that goes a long way. Because in a resume, you cannot really communicate, you know, what you're like socially, what your personality is, what your core values are, how you are on a team. But you can assess that stuff if you hang out with people on a social level. So for example, sometimes I go to Beer Wednesday, and actually one of the interns that we have is somebody that I met at Beer Wednesday, because she told me, like, oh, I'm really into the industry, and I'm going to this school, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know, give me your resume, and that was like 2 months ago. And then every week I would like give her an impromptu interview, just like saying, like, okay, so how do you handle this situation? And well, it's my spare time. A good producer never stops being a producer. So even when you're out and about, and especially like when you're a lead producer, you're always evaluating people. You just can't help it, it's subconscious. Even right now, I have a few friends that work at Blizzard, and I'm still actively recruiting them. And if they see this video, they know I'm gonna get them. Yeah. They're gonna give me shit for that. But yeah, you never stop, because part of being a producer, like I said, is managing a lot of social aspects, and it bleeds over into your personal life. You can't turn it off. And if you can, please teach me, because it gets a little crazy sometimes. But yeah, so the short and sweet of it is, for networking, go to all those social situations, get to know people that are in the industry. Please do not bombard them, do not ask for a job. More often than not, just by probability, there will not be a job ready for you when you ask for it, but when there is a job, they will have you in mind. So just get to know them, find common interests, listen to them. Typically, when somebody gets off of work, they don't really want to talk about work unless they want to vent about work. And if they want to vent about work, just hear them out. And I don't know, just don't be annoying. I've come across some annoying eager people. None of them are in the room, don't worry. No, okay, they're not. But just treat them like you would any other person, like a normal friend. Because more often than not, that'll make you stand out more. Because there's a lot of people that bombard me on a weekly basis, saying, oh, you know, you work at Obsidian, you're a producer. Do you have any openings? Do you have a job? Here's my resume. I'm like, you brought your resume out drinking? Why? I'm too drunk to even read right now. Do you understand this? I'm gonna see this as a napkin. Just so you know. And also will offend the person that took the time to write it. But yeah, I mean, yeah, so it's who you know, not what you know, but you gotta know something and don't be an idiot. There. Next question. Yes?
Is there a game that you or your friends like that you made a project based on it?
Yes, but it was very obscure. So, back when we were working on Hyperball, that was, I'd say it was 80% my design. And it was a hybrid game of, I forgot what the name of the course was here, but it was a 3D programming course. And as the final project, you had the option of like making something in 3D, and so I chose to make a game, which was really stupid because I only had a week, but it worked. And it was basically a miniature golf game where instead of actually hitting a ball, you controlled the ball directly, the ball's acceleration. So move the mouse forward, the ball goes forward. Move to the right, it applies acceleration to the right. So it's like a whole vector acceleration system. And the goal was to get the ball in the hole. The trick was your ball had health points, and there were like hazards, so your ball could get hurt if you hit the wall. Your ball would lose health, and if your ball died, you'd lose the level. And so Hyperball was basically a hybrid of that game, which I thought of, I kind of based that game off of Marble Madness, which was a really, really old game. Though they should remake that because that game's awesome. The other game that it was a hybrid of was a game called Moon-Base Commander, which was a turn-based strategy game where you started with a base and you had to build up your base by connecting nodes, and it was like turn-based and you played against your friends and you had different abilities. And so Hyperball is like a hybrid of those two. So I think most games actually don't start completely from nothing. I think as game developers, we all draw inspiration from something. Even if it's not a game, it's something that is a part of us. I would really call shenanigans on anybody that says, I designed this game for randomness, because guess what? Even randomness isn't fully random. Because I mean, like, oh well, like I just thought of this number randomly. Well, your brain thought of it randomly based on a series of events that have occurred within your life, which are deterministic if you could actually know everything within your mind. But that's a whole completely different theory that a lot of people are going to disagree on. So for now, just believe I'm bullshit. But yeah, so every game I design is drawing from something, but I never ever try to make a clone or a knockoff. I always see elements that I really like for example, Batman Arkham Asylum. I love the combat system, and grappling hooks are awesome, but I'd never make a Batman Arkham Asylum game. And I still even play Arkham City. Side thought, so when you're deep in the game industry, you never have time to play games anymore. It's really sad. Yeah, Chris is nodding. Yeah, he knows. However, you really look forward to the days when you can spend vacation time, and so I kind of play my games like a year offset to save up for all the Steam sales, because those are great deals. Steam, gamers for gamers. Wait, was that the interplay thing? I don't know. Anyways, so, but yeah, and so as long as you play enough of the games that are out there, just to have a sampling for where the industry is going, what concepts are good and what's selling, and just add that to your knowledge cube, but try not to clone them, you'll probably make a good game. Funny story is Portal, which started off as Narbacular Drop. They were in the student showcase of the IGF when my team was in the IGF competition, and yeah, their team's pretty cool. Yeah, that's all. That's not really a story. So it's like, wow, you guys are neat. I had no idea that Valve would pick them up. I'll admit, part of me is jealous. Neither here nor there. Next question.
I have a question.
We went? Yes.
Back here. So you mentioned there being a lot of like bad producers in the industry, and I know I've seen like some tell-all blogs that come out like after.
I'm a bad producer.
So like, is there something about like management in the games industry that makes it just inherently hard or more likely to fail than like other parts of the software industry?
Good question. So I would say that the problem with like the whole bad producer thing is this industry is still, people would say it's in its infancy, but I mean, there have been people that have been in this industry since the 80s. And since a lot of it's very undefined, I mean, programming, we know how to compile, we know what's good code, we know what's bad code. Production, however, is more of a management philosophy. And unfortunately, the software development industry, like just when you're making apps, you're primarily only dealing with programmers. But with the game industry, you're dealing with several different disciplines. You're dealing with art, design, audio, QA, and there is QA in the software industry, and also production. But when you take all these disciplines together, and you need to actually create a game from it that actually has, I guess, something that is not easy to quantify, which is the fun factor. There is really no good metric for fun. It's just your game is either fun and it feels fun, or it isn't. There isn't like a checklist for what it means to be fun. Or if there is, I think that would be a great research project, and that would probably help the industry out a lot. But as far as producers, lately, from what I've seen actually, a lot of students that I've come across that are on production tracks tend to have the right mindset. The bad producers that I was referring to didn't have a formal background in production. They had a formal background in something else, like potentially programming or some other discipline, and then they fell into production because either, I don't want to say they weren't good at something, but rather they preferred the management atmosphere, even if they weren't good at it. The other problem with some bad producers, and there were no bad producers at Obsidian or Blizzard, it's just people I've heard about, that's all. With bad producers, they tend to be very, I guess, assertive and power hungry. And the problem is that since a lot of this industry is very casual, people that have that kind of I don't know, salesman attitude can woo over a lot of people too effectively, and they end up being very destructive for a team, almost cancerous. And you can really tell in some postmortems that you read, like in, for example, Game Developer Magazine, where a bad producer has really affected their pipelines, because you get somebody in a position of power that cannot competently carry out their position. And just like any other profession, when you have somebody doing something that they're not qualified to do, that can have a ripple effect throughout the entire team, especially production. I think there's a good flash video on what a producer does. I'm not sure if it was on Penny Arcade or something, but it's great and very insightful. And this is a very vague reference, but if you could find it, it's a good video. And I'm sure somebody here, you probably have a friend that's seen it, or you guys even might know what I'm talking about.
Extra credit.
Yes, extra credits or whatever. But yeah, that was a good video, and that pretty much hit the nail on the head with what a producer is, and like, I think it even goes into like some stuff about bad producers. But yeah. Next question. Yes.
You say that you try to stay away from design while you're in the producer role, but like, is it tempting? I mean, you are a designer, or you have been, right?
That's a loaded question. Okay, so I guess I'll talk a little bit about this. I utilize a creative outlet in that, so by day I am a lead producer of a project, and at night I'm working on a few pitches here and there, and that's how I kind of still flex my design muscles. And someday I might not be a producer, I might be something else, but I love production, but I still kind of get the creative itch sometimes, and so working on pitches or side things is a good way to satisfy that hunger. But most producers that I work with, especially the ones that are really good at it, need to accept that you might be a producer for a very, very long time. And it's something that I've dubbed coffee theory, and it's a completely obscure reference, so I'm going to define it. So back when I was running my small indie team, I don't even think I mentioned what the name of it was. So the name of the team running out of my dining room was Iocane Studios, because I was nuts about The Princess Bride. But that's not really true. There was like some history with it. I did like voice acting for an audio thing. Anyways, this is another thing I did in New Vegas. I loved doing temp VO, and I even voiced a whole entire town. If you're familiar with the town Novak, imagine everybody in that town having my voice. Very frightening, because I did the voice of an elderly Southern woman married to an elderly Scottish man, and they would get into a banter back and forth, and it'd be my voice. I mean, I made my voice sound different, but it was very surreal to see that in-game, and that's when I stopped doing voiceovers. Until at one company party, Fergus made me use the voice of the elderly Southern woman, and that was embarrassing. But, I mean, gotta follow orders. I forgot what the question was. What was it? Anyways.
Do you design?
Temptation
to design.
Oh, right, the design thing. Yeah. Okay. Totally lost my bearings. Wait, what? Oh, yeah, I have Princess Bride, and then... No, I still lost it. Whatever. No, I need to get back now, it's bugging me. Okay, so now I got it. Sometimes as a producer, you just need to accept that you're going to have to be in that role for a while, and over time, you might want to do something else. But Coffee Theory, yes, that's where I was. I knew if I just kept stalling, I'd get it again. So Coffee Theory, back when I was at Iocane, everybody would have to make coffee. We'd alternate day by day, and then one day, our artist Stu made horrible coffee. And we're like, you're never making coffee again because you suck at it. And so now it was 3 of us making coffee. And then one day, Matt made horrible coffee. And so Matt never had to make coffee again because he was horrible at it. And so now there was down to 2 of us making coffee. And Nick never made a bad cup of coffee, but I made better coffee. And because of that, I wound up making coffee forever. And so Coffee Theory basically is, when you're too good at something, you're going to be asked to do it. So be prepared for it. Because it will happen. If not with coffee, with production. Which is probably why I'm in the role I'm in now. Anyways, next question. That was a hurtful topic. Yes!
What are your favorite video games of all time?
Oh, gosh, where to begin?
You can list a few.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for establishing that for me. I was going to list a few anyway, whether or not you gave me that opportunity. Let's see. So, definitely, I love the original Monkey Island games. I grew up on adventure games. Yeah, adventure games, awesome. They're never die. Let's see. Second to that, since I used to throw LAN parties, I love the old Star Siege Tribes games. Tribes 1 and Tribes 2. Tribes 3, not so much. The new Tribes game, I'm curious about. We'll see how that goes. I also love the old Master of Orion games and Master of Magic, the old Microprose games or classics. XCOM and its successors. Not so much the second XCOM game, because that was kind of difficult, and you should not be able to shoot a torpedo on land. I'm just saying, when you're designing a game, try to get some realism in there. It made no sense, but whatever, I was young. For recent games, actually not even recent games, I also really liked the Jedi Knight series, the FPS where you can be a Jedi, because I love Star Wars. Then what are some other really good games? There's a lot of good games out there and a lot of bad games. I've recently somehow found time to play Portal 2, and I liked it much better than the first one. Well, relatively. Great writing. Let's see, what else is there? Oh, I was completely addicted to The Longest Journey, because, like I said, I grew up on adventure games. The old Zork series, those are really good. Until Republic 1 and 2, Mass Effect 1, Dragon Age I never actually finished, but I hear it's really good. I'll probably get back to that sometime around Christmas. Like I said, I get really behind on games. Batman Arkham Asylum was awesome, and I was amazed that it was like a small team. This person right here has fallen asleep. Yeah. Oh, okay, just gonna stay asleep now. Probably a rough schedule on a Monday. And we're all talking about her while looking at her and laughing. It's fine. Her friends are going to tell her about it afterwards. Oh, and she's awake now. So, let's see. I would say, oh my God, how could I forget my all-time favorite game? The Command & Conquer series. Clearly, I like Kane. Except for the last one that came out, that kind of let me down a little. But the latest Red Alert game that came was good too. But I could ramble on and for games that I love. But I'm just gonna stop it there. Yeah. Next question. Yes.
Do you have anything to say about the distinction between games that you would like to play or would like to create and what you think you would actually be playing? Because I think about it a lot because I have really taste in games that I program.
Are you a designer?
I'm a programmer actually.
Does that sound like a designer question? Maybe you might have a little designer in you. Be careful. Basically what I would say is, it depends on what your goal is. If you want to make a game that you're not intending to sell very well, or if that's not a goal, then make whatever you want. If you want to make a game that can sell to the masses, always look at what's popular, what really sells well, what gets the best ratings, and I'd say analyze those games and see what is it about these games that makes these popular. What is it about it that makes them sell? Even if you don't like those concepts, you cannot deny that it is what the masses like. And as we mature more as gamers and game developers, we often fall into a mindset of like, oh, you know, everybody just likes crap now. Like, who plays another, like, Gears of War, another Sims? Like, sorry to tell you, but those games sell really, really well. So if you actually want to make a successful company, you need to play on what works. And I think that the happy medium is to find the aspects of those games that is appealing to the mass market while still pushing the industry forward with innovative concepts. So for example, Portal is a good example of it. Portal is using a lot of familiarity with things, but pushing some things forward. Yeah, I shouldn't call out other games that feel derivative and clones because those companies might talk to me later and be mad. But you know, there's some Orange County companies that might release, you know, games that don't really push the envelope that much further and release things that are just clones of themselves over and over. But, you know, it's neither here nor there, really. Yep. Not talking anymore about that one. Oh, good, a question.
I know you already said that as a producer, you don't have any creative, you can't put your own desires into the game. But do you get to at least choose a project that you're working on, or do they?
Well, you can state a preference, but in this day and age, it is safer to go wherever the wind takes you. Especially if you would like to, I don't know, have a happy employment. Because if let's say hypothetically, like I'm at Obsidian and there's 3 projects going on, or 5 projects, or 10 projects. Like I'm using crazy numbers so they don't know how many projects are going on. Let's say there's 100 projects going on, not a single one of them I want to be a part of. Guess what? There's no place for me there anymore. Sometimes you need to work on projects that might not be your preference, but you need to find a way to be passionate about them and to, I would say, exude that passion in such a way that the rest of your team can feel confident in your own dedication to it. Because when you get down to it, there has got to be some aspect of a game that you can latch onto and appreciate, and then just like hold on to that for dear life and make that like the best thing about the game. So for example, I might be on a game where I don't like the story or I don't agree with the art style, but damn it, I love that gameplay. And so that's the thing I'm going to be passionate about, and everything else will follow from it. If you actually do work on a game that you love through and through and you're passionate about, congratulations. That, from what I've seen, rarely can occur. But I mean, I guess it happened for me last year with Fallout New Vegas and also with the project I'm on now. So sometimes you get lucky. Or maybe I just am very flexible with the projects I like, and I just start liking whatever I'm on because I like working. That might be it too. I'm not sure. How about another question? Yes.
What's your experience working with acids earlier?
I thought you said acid. Like, no, sir. No, sir. Experience with working with assets?
Creating animation.
So I myself cannot do art. I cannot art well at all, and I use art as a verb. I'm horrible at arting. My stick figures even look horrible. But as far as managing assets, asset pipelines are very, very important for production. If you have a poorly understood pipeline or there's a lot of bottlenecks in it, that can severely be a detriment to the project. One of the first things that I do whenever I get onto a new project is I first look at all the pipelines in place, make sure everybody understands what they need to do, and then see where some things could be improved. And part of that is the programmer in me constantly want to optimize the process. But with asset management in general, if you have a horrible pipeline, that can completely break a game. And so, for example, a character art pipeline, where basically you need to take it from concept to the character artist actually need to create the mesh, and then take it to the animators, they need to animate it. If there's any bottlenecks in that pipeline, that can stall your project for quite a bit, because now your characters aren't going to be getting online soon enough, creatures aren't getting online soon enough, that they can't be balanced by designers, and you're going to have to cut the number of creatures that you have, and now you have less content in the game, and all because, like, let's say it took an artist 3 times as long to get a creature into the game as it should have. Not saying that was an actual problem, but just hypothetically, I mean, those types of pipeline problems will probably crop up in a game. And the sooner you can resolve them, the more content you can get in, and the higher the quality of the content, because they can iterate on it. That kind of answer the question, sort of? I'll take that. Yes, Chris.
Oh, 5 minutes.
Oh, I thought you were raising your hand, but ask me a question anyway. What do you want to know, Chris? You
You put me on the
disappoint
spot.
so
You put me
much.
on the spot.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, in the back.
What tools do you find yourself using a lot day to day? Like, I mean, Access,
Facebook,
Microsoft
Twitter.
Project, stuff like that. Photoshop. I mean, like, what do you use day to day? Like,
So as a producer, your knowledge of Excel is invaluable. That's one of the first things that I look for when I interview a producer is how well do you know Excel? How good are you at these formulas? Do you know what a pivot table is? Here's like a sample data table. Organize this, sort it for me, and output some numbers. And basically, with Excel, we use that on a day-to-day basis to balance the schedule sometimes, because while there are tools out there that can help, like MS Project, for example, nothing can beat the way Excel can calculate formulas as quickly as possible. So sometimes I just use it as a quick calculation tool. For example, a character art pipeline. When I know, let's say a concept artist will take 2 days to do something simple and 5 days to do something difficult. A character artist will take like 3 days to do something simple, and then based on the difficulty, then you get this like whole entire checklist of like, well, what are these features this creature has to have? Does it have like ridges? Is it furry? Well, that'll add another few days. And then just make a checklist in Excel, have it calculate out everything at the end, and by the time you've like filled in this whole entire Excel spreadsheet, it spits out at the end exactly how long it'll take for you to get that creature in the game. And you know, well, if I like make this creature not have bones in like its like spine, then we'll save an extra 2 days and it'll get done on time. And so from that information, you can take that to the designer that's designing the creature and end up making a creature that will actually be done by the milestone as opposed to one that would have to get cut. So Excel is a very valuable tool. Another one that we use is SharePoint, which is a Microsoft product. We use that typically for tasking people, and also as kind of like an overall project portal, so you can list out, have it manage documents, design docs, project documents, where things are at as far as just the overall calendar for the current milestone. SharePoint is a wonderful tool and a huge thorn in our side, isn't it, Chris?
Yes.
Yes. But you hate to love it and you love to hate it. That's how it works. As far as Photoshop, I never really use Photoshop that often. My image editing tool of choice is IrfanView because it's free and I can do a lot of stuff with it. Photoshop takes a while to load compared to that. What else do I use? WinRAR, when you need to RAR things up. I like Trillion for communication. We don't have any Macs in the company, we're all like Windows 7. What else? Outlook for emails. And either Chrome or Firefox for Facebook and Tumblr and stuff. Next question. I think I have like maybe 2.5 minutes or so. Is it going to be your question? Oh. Last question. No pressure. No pressure. You and the glasses, because you haven't asked a question yet.
I was just wondering, you're talking about setting up a pipeline. Is there sort of a guideline there when you're looking at it?
So with pipelines in general, and just with production processes, I hear a lot of buzzwords being thrown around, and one of the first things that I hate is the uses of buzzwords. Like, oh, well, you know, I'm a Scrum Master, and I perfected an Agile system. There is no silver bullet to any project. I mean, it is important to study these methodologies, like, you know, all the life cycles for software development. But the important thing is to take the nuggets of what works out of those and like just learn all of those things and just put that in your toolbox. And then when you're on a new project, use the right tool for the job. While you can hammer a nail in with a screwdriver, you're going to get a lot better results with a hammer. And so don't look at like Scrum or Waterfall or like all these other things as just like the surefire way 100% how to lead a team. Use the right tool for the job. So for example, sometimes on a project we have people paired up from several different disciplines. We have an artist paired up with a designer, and for other things on the project, we'll just have all the artists together generating assets like crazy and being an asset factory. And all of those things apply to the pipeline as well. So when constructing the pipeline, look at what works with other companies and what doesn't work, learn from them as much as you can, and when looking at an existing pipeline, always get metrics. How long does it take for you to finish something? How long does it take for you to get something in game? How correct is this once it's in-game? How much iteration does it require? Do you need an approval process from like your art lead? Like, is this thing getting kicked back a lot? Is there not enough like direction early on? Like, is this thing not defined? If it's an art asset, always look for bottlenecks and deficiencies in the pipeline process. And just it's amazing. Like, if you can actually shave an hour off of like somebody's time, it adds up in the end, and you end up saving man-months of time if it's a long enough project. And what would have taken you just 5 minutes to analyze has now allowed yourself to not have to cut as much from the project. And that can have an amazing result for a game. It could make or break the success of a game too. If it's like a big feature that you need to cut at the end, that could have been like the most awesome thing since butter. And butter is awesome. Not for your cholesterol, but it's just very versatile. And I'm going to end on that note.